This is Chariot.
Hello and welcome back to Action Time. This is Eben Jairi. I'm very excited to be here this beautiful afternoon or evening or wherever you may find yourself. Today is a continuum of our conversation about mental health, and I do have with me Emmanuel, and we're going to be continuing with our conversation. And today's topic for discussion is what is the church's role in supporting mental health in our church or our congregation? So I'd like to welcome on the podium Manuel. And before we even delve into our conversation for today, I'd like to encourage that you continue to share the link with friends, family, and loved ones so that everyone is educated about mental health and all the topics that we may have on this platform in the future. Most importantly, also subscribe to our Facebook channel, our YouTube channel, and also follow us on Twitter for any questions. Follow us on Twitter for any for all the secrets that we'll be publishing. So, Manny, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good, Doc. How are you?
I'm doing very well, man. It's good to have you in my on my show. Keeping in mind that we've been talking on the backstage for a long time, and I'm very glad that this event has
Yeah.
come into fruition. Very, very excited. So I know last week when you came in, we were discussing the mental health challenges about in the church and also in the next generation. And today, specifically, we would like to know the church's role in supporting mental health. So, why don't we start off by first defining exactly what mental health is?
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you guys for having me on the show again. I think last week was really engaging. The viewers enjoyed it. So hopefully today we can, if hopefully those that are watching can also chime in, and then so that'll be more of an interactive engagement as well. So the definition of mental health, it basically includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So it's what affects the way we think, feel, and act out. Um, Another component is how we adjust or how we handle or react to certain stressors, and how we also relate to other people. So those are the components of mental health. Hopefully I didn't lose anyone there with the definition, but yeah.
So, thanks for that. And for the sake of our audience, I'm going to try my best to speak my broken tree. So, pardon me.
Oh yes.
But so yeah, so like let's try to like define it in the local dialect, right? So
Sure.
besides that, mental health at the same as again there mental health like first of all, right, mental health treat and then there.
Wow, you just put me on the spot like that. You know what's funny is
Me
because I
too.
have it in my head, but
Mhm.
I don't know how to bring it out. Like I dream
Emu yare.
I don't. Yeah, well,
I dream
that
emu
would be
yare.
that would be mental illness, but mental health would be
Thank
like
you. I dream emu apomodeng.
yes,
Okay.
yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's how. Yeah.
good. I mean, I was like, I struggle with tree, but it's not that bad. I think. Wait, Obi said Adrimu Apomodem. Yeah, so that's
Yes.
what it is. Adrimu
Correct.
Apomodem. Yeah,
Yes.
so thanks for highlighting that. Yeah, that was it. Because once I mean, dream yeah, I'm a dancer maker, but I try. It's say you are Adrimu Apomodem. What church you say? Pass be a nkutahodie ne ndanfofoɔ di anaasɛ biribi a yɛte atumi play a factor on it. How exactly ɛna nyamesɛm anaasɛ kristosɛm anaasɛ asɔresɛm contributed to yɛn mu adwene mu apɔmuden?
Right. I think so. We have to put it in context and not put into consideration the group that we're talking about, right? So
Mhm.
if we are talking about the Ghanaian people,
Mhm.
right? We know, sir, religion and religion is a huge major factor of our culture, of our everyday life. Sometimes we get it, if you notice, especially in church, when there's like certain topics that sometimes we get it confused what religion and culture is, because
Correct.
so intertwined and we don't know, say, yeah, is it in the Bible? And I say, yeah, no, I'm gonna try say
Mhm.
because them
Mhm.
they didn't know the Bible, right? That came
Correct.
out. So um where so again, coming back, you have to understand where the group of people you're talking about. So we are talking about our people, Ghanaians, where it plays a huge role because it's part of our daily life. And the way I'm defining it, and say it's how we interact with other people. Other people can also you can also replace people with other what's the word I'm looking for? Other The only word that's coming to my mind is vector, like for instance, like church or
Mhm.
school or government. Um, so the way we interact with our church, it's a major part of our mental health because it's not like where then and you come home, that's it, right? Sister, we were frail, brother, we were frail. You get you maybe contact with pastor maybe 2 or 3 times before you even go to church the next week, depending on
Correct.
what type of church goer you are. So it's
Mhm.
just ingrained in our everyday life. So it plays a huge role in our mental health with the
Gotcha.
definition that I provided.
Yep. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I think so. Last week, which I said, and like all that plays a factor. Like it could be they reacted to like people's comment to us, and they react or engage we can kind of like derive stuff about, like our mental health from there. And so obviously it's good to be promoted like a safe and a sound place to congregate. And yes, like we bet you
Exactly.
alcohol like something to go home while all about the president
Yeah.
have the burden with them, right?
Right.
So
Right.
my follow up for that would be said, into you can't sorry a church leaders now, how would he be able to create awareness about mental health issues? Oh yeah, sorry, community anymore. Keeping in mind say every day you can't say GDA here. And sometimes too, depending on maybe sorry about Kono, everyone just signs in there all. So
Mhm.
how do we kind of like read in between the lines, say yes, there is something about faith, and also there is a science aspect to it. I know it's the last week who kind of wants them say, oh, anyone saw vampire and kwai, also power, but deep cut like in depth into it. Actually, like then I always say, yeah, church leaders no one can know.
So
Yet
yeah.
to make sure say
Right.
we'll be more comfortable to talk about these things in the churches.
Right. So, I think the question that you're asking to summarize is what are the solutions?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for religious leaders to tackle mental health from a perspective of body and soul. So, it's together. You can't your body can't function without the soul can't function without the body. And when if I am to provide other words for it, I'm talking about body being like as far as physical, where science is involved, and then soul would be the spiritual. They go hand in
Mm-hmm.
hand, body and soul.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to be like a neurologist or a major psychologist to be able to understand how the brain functions in society, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of stories in the Bible, practical experiences in our daily lives. I think last week the host brought up an example of the girl in the neighborhood, and now
Yeah.
kasakasana,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, it- and also focusing on the solution. I think that we need to focus on, or the leaders in the church need to focus on affirmation, like, hey, it's okay that this is what you're going through. I think that's the first major step. It's the tone that you typically hear is more of like a judgmental, stigmatizing, A, what you think said, hey, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Instead of someone coming out and saying, you're fine, without you saying first, say, what's wrong with me? The person that's already affirmed you before you starts judging yourself. So that's the ideology that we should have as church leaders. And I'm gonna talk about more practical stuff, like
let's get into that.
I mean, I don't know how many listeners are listening right now, but how many have actually, like, their church have dedicated a whole month to mental health, right? Where there's actually mental health awareness month that's accepted by internationally, or even here in the United States. Maybe that's to be more practical and to be more focused. We have to start having these type of programs where the whole month is just focused on mental health, right? I'm not trying to say that the church should turn into a therapy clinic or something. But if you dedicate 1 month, that's only 4, maybe, depending on how many times you're meeting a week, at least 4 dedicated sermons. I'm not sermons, but sessions or days out of 365 days in a year where you're focusing on mental health. I think that's doable, so it's not something that's hard to do. I think I think I mentioned it. I mentioned this last week, that it's okay for pastors to not know what to do and seek outside help when it comes to these things. And I know there are organizational structures depending on what church you belong to. I can only speak from my church. I'm SDA. I know there's like hierarchy, so you have to get certain programs approved beforehand. But this is something where it's like, this is today. I don't think it will be hard for if there is a higher up to say, oh no, you can't talk about mental health in church. If that's the case, that's alarming. That's very alarming. So yeah.
Thanks for that answer. I mean, you know what's very interesting, like the points that you kind of like brought up about stigma, about church leaders being able to be vulnerable. That's the word I would use, and say, hey, no, I don't know the answer. These are things I'd like for us to have in our conversation for today. But in the meantime, so I always share video where I know we discussed it. What is the church role in supporting mental health? And also, you ever share a link number for so you never to me about educate you in regards to this topic, because in here, Sabi to me and Cassie, sorry, they're Munquaco na ya dream one, I say, ya Pomodimo, 100%. You go on so bad in China. Also, do Unipedia in Naba. Now, Unipedia, I want to for the Ben or the Abenyankopo. It's message says, so we're sharing about wonderful new and I now educate here about this. So many. I saw this stigma 7 by. So say you can't stigma personal. The person will translate to treatment, because sometimes you can't profile stigma. Like stigma.
Wow. Okay. So if you look at the definition of stigma, maybe we can both define it together. Me Shada.
I'll try my best to support you.
So stigma is basically Oxford Dictionary says that a mark or disgrace associated with a particular circumstance.
Okay.
Into yeah, Bob me my dream say stigma, to translate it, like I said, yeah, my tree.
I'll help you.
Yago who fee bisa, right?
Yep, you go with you. Like you with you do anymore. A label
Right.
you're not deserving. Like you're with like when you like you're disgrace.
You're a
Right?
disgrace.
To the society.
Right.
Okay.
You're a standout or a standalone.
Yeah, well, oh yeah, strong, but in a negative way.
In a negative way. Yeah. Right. Yep.
Okay. And you know, say we will be sad we what is sad stigma we are to the corner so right? How often and as uncle for you know mutumi seeking help because already know sabi me sorry. I sorry not identify me say. And our community number one also know I saw identify some more mental health say but because of that I've been neglected. What would be the church's role or responsibility in bringing these people home to make sure say, hey, at least your support system be more? Because I know it's the last time we kind about the recreational activities in the account.
Yeah.
But I don't think say it ends there because recreational activities in Kwandia and you call concerts in the account. So I feel like there is more to it that you can shed more or educate us about it as to how are these folks that are impacted by the stigma? No? How do we make them to feel that they belong? And also, so far, the impact that I have on no, what can we do to make sure say I'm not partner any longer?
Sure. I think your question was like a two-part question. I'll answer the first part as far as how does someone go come on and seek help. It's hard to. It's hard to when you have not say isolated or and I say, baso no be show maybe, for instance, you have a illness where you talk to yourself, right? Oh, how would be about you now? It's like you're internally preoccupied now. Kasa, now kasa like how if that stigma has been placed on yourself with you. But I'm for and I say, and if you for and I understand who's going to come, who is going to step out and actually and help that individual. One, nobody wants to be the one to do that because maybe like then they will be the ones to be talked about. Right? Say, hey, now you're getting yourself into unsuro, stuff like that. So it makes it very hard. It all comes back, and I hate to sound like a broken tape recorder, but it always comes back to the education.
Correct.
If the people are not educated, they'll be ignorant about these type of issues. If the people are educated, they will realize that a mental illness is similar to obia maybe and I say or high blood pressure. If you do certain things, you'll be triggered, or if you do certain things, it will worsen the illness. So if we are able to put it in the language, I think also the most important thing is put it in a language that our people will understand, like how we're trying to do now, where it's kind of hard to put all of these definitions and concepts into Yang local language, and that's part of the task as well. How can we present it to our people on Matias and not have to use these so high difficult words and so I think I hope that answered your question.
It did. And then the follow-up to that part, Sebi, yeah, stigmatizing for way more. Now, who nipa na wo person also be the other ramifications of it, right? Like, how do we decipher around it? Because I don't think is the responsibility of the preacher man alone. It's a whole thing, as like say a church, any church. Let's say leaders now. I believe leadership it starts with individual, right? Semi sharpen on us, equipment who to be able to be there for that person that is suffering from some sort of mental illness. How should I approach that conversation?
Sure. I think the most important thing as an individual or as a I would say a regular person or a non mental health professional, even if you are a mental health professional, like you can't just come out and let me backtrack. But let's say for just a regular church member, number one thing that you can do is just to be there and support that individual without being judgmental,
Hmm.
and just understand that they're sick. Honestly, they're sick. When I say sick, they're like not like sick as in using it very very negative, like
Yeah.
oyare, right?
Hmm.
Into the only thing you can do is provide support and then try to motivate them to go and seek help,
Hmm.
right? And then it comes back to the education piece where if the members are educated on how to go and seek help for mental health issues, you'll be able to say that, hey, you know, go in your doctor, not catching the saying no. Now maybe a bit to my assessment amount. So
Hmm.
when to me, yeah, I'm sure so bit to me. I refer to a be a bit to me. I said just as we do all the time in our daily life, I'm sure people come to you all the time like, yo, Charlie, me tell me I drove and I'm in far.
Yeah,
Oh,
fine.
to me prescribing man, but you can show them that
Hmm.
oh, go to the doctor, tell them this and this and that, right? That's
Hmm.
what you do
Hmm.
because you are not their doctor per
Hmm.
se. That's what we have to do as a people. That's I think that's what we can do.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So again, I kind of like to make reference a lot to last week's video because the reason why I made
Sure.
that sound because if you said you will have no share the first episode there, I would really recommend or I could share to follow the story and get a better understanding of what's going on. So last week, you talked about you as a professional, you all have your Bible, which is the DSM-5, right?
Right.
So me a lay person, me was sorry then, but me need just add my day at home. But my investment call like
Mm-hmm.
any professional school, but I want to kind of like integrate it through like my church,
Mm.
what you call it, like quarterlies that you mentioned the other day now.
Oh,
And I like to like use it to also educate myself and people around me. Are there like any resources out there that I can refer to again? And yes, it may you could diagnose you, but at least informed.
mm-hmm.
Are there
Yeah.
like any resources out there that you can point us to so we can like kind of like read up on it, and then if there are any questions, we can then, or if there's an event where we come across people like that in our congregations, we can now be like, hey, I've seen this before, so I think I think it might be this, so therefore this is your referral. Because almost the last time I said seven but school, the parents are not with them all the time, which is true. The teachers are the ones that see the kids and they're able to kind of like sometimes tell like, yo, you need to go to the nurse. And then the nurse will now make the recommendation like, well, you need to see such and such. I'm coming from that angle, and I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm coming from that angle as in churches most of the time, and that's the reality. Most of the time, parents don't even get to sit with their kids at church because to church, some Sunday school. By the time I'm with Sunday school up on it, like services going on, and you have to know about show say, hey, they're in course, right? So what bottom line, what
Right.
are some resources I can point to in that case?
Right. There's so many resources out there. So I don't want to like nitpick certain ones.
Hmm.
But it's important to know how to search for it, right?
Hmm.
So I would say it's important. You're coming, you say from a layman's perspective,
Hmm.
not knowing exactly, say this is major depression or this is anxiety or this is schizophrenia.
Hmm.
But you as an individual, you may see the signs and our symptoms, and then find if you said maybe EBB. So I think or looking up the symptoms and seeing what is related to or what possibly can be related to.
Okay.
Um, you talked about the DSM-5, and last week I mentioned that there are some diagnoses that have very, very similar symptoms to the next one, but depending on the severity, and I said the length of the symptoms, will determine whether it's diagnosis A and not diagnosis B. But then that's when it gets too technical, right?
Correct.
So wouldn't want to put too much on that for someone who doesn't know the ins and outs of it, but more so paying attention to the symptoms. Okay, you see someone, the person used to be very, very lively in church. The person used to be involved in youth activities. Afe Oba, he's just sitting there by himself. He doesn't talk to anyone. He just smiles. After church, now I'll call. The whole week with me, a friend is out and can. No, Abba, sorry. Same more over and over again, right? These are the things where you can, like, you can Google and say, hey, you can Google and search, someone who used to be active and live and energetic, and now it's, you get what I'm saying? Like you focus more on the symptoms or the behavior, let me say the behavior, and then that might help you say, so this person might be suffering from depression and maybe PTSD, and the person is bipolar, but that's not up to you to know, decide that, right? But I'm sure when you search that, the results will say the person is probably going through something that they're having a hard time dealing with, and these are things that the one thing that it's always important is to think about is safety, right? If there are signs that may lead to very, very harmful actions, that's when you have to step in as a person, as a friend, and say, I don't want something bad to happen to you. I think you should go and see a doctor and tell them this is what's happening. I think most primary care providers are equipped to do some mini assessment, and refer.
True.
So that's where it starts. And I hope that answered your question.
Yep.
See, I also have some mental challenges where my ADHD, so I may forget. So if I don't answer your question, please feel free to.
I'll remind you, and I honestly think you answered the question. That question that I had asked you was about the resources that is readily available for people that aren't like professionals like yourself. And you've mentioned that if I should be in a room where I observe that someone was basically engaging or very active in the congregation, and out of nowhere their mood has changed, and now they come to church like only on Sundays, you call them throughout the week, they don't answer. That's concerning. So I should kind of like look up their behavior and then make a recommendation to the right.
And then even maybe you don't even have to do that, but when you see them in person, say, hey, I noticed something is wrong, you're different. Probably you're the only person that has approached them and said that, and they'll probably just spill everything out to you, right? So just approaching the person and acknowledging, saying, oh wow, they'll think that, hey, I thought I was doing a good job hiding whatever is going on. Can see it in my face. That might be it. You don't have to. Then you don't even have to Google. So there's different things you can do.
Somehow kind of very true, because the church is supposed to be a community, and yet said like the church is supposed to be a place, even though a community, like nipa be on the boundary, like, hey, I can do it to a certain extent. It doesn't mean say nipa or so when said obi like is going through some sort of like trauma, you shouldn't be there for them. And I feel like every generation has become that way. Say the is like, yo, I come to church, I just do my thing, I'm out. But that's not the right way, because it could be me, it could be you, it could be someone that you love dearly in the church, and they're going through things, and if you're not able to like diagnose it or like help them seek attention, the treatment they need ASAP, the ramifications, about maybe, you never know, the shooting spree that has been going on can happen. A lot of
it's crazy.
A lot of things I feel like are preventative, and this is definitely one of them. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add on, say, that's why I think it's very important to educate layman on how
Mm-hmm.
to notice certain behaviors,
True.
and then be able to express it, or like react to it in a way where we're not being judgmental as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's the tricky
Mm-hmm.
part,
Yep.
because Obi
Yep.
Wahaba, they will turn into Dr. Phil and then start trying to diagnose everyone. So you have to put that disclaimer in there too.
Yep. Yeah, you're definitely right. And I somehow kind of like it sounds like a joke, but
Yeah.
most of the time, the struggle that many of us may have is the communication aspect. We might have the information in our head,
Mm-hmm.
right? But send a bit to me engaging background without making it sound say, yeah, Georgia Wano.
Yeah.
And the struggle that I personally have witnessed in most like churches that involves Ghanaians. And I think say I've always this is my quote, and I might be wrong on it, but this is my personal quote. I've always said this. I feel like the more you become educated, it's a curse because like the lens that you view things from, the people sitting next to you may not see it the same way. And I might be
Yeah.
wrong, but that's how I truly feel. Because
Yeah.
say me know said quick who go through something. Me know because I'm like, yo, quick, I feel like such and such is worrying you. And you already put up like a defense, right? Like there's two
Mm-hmm.
communication. What do you defense about already at? I personally will be like, next time, me who crap me how I did you, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like if we're growing up as a church, and especially being young adults and youth, and this being mental health being like a serious issue within the society that we live in, I think say I would say yeah, who receptive of comments or feedback from people. And to my
Yeah.
follow-up question to you in the set, what is the role of individuals sorry anymore in identifying and addressing mental health issues?
Right. I think we kind of answered this. So
Yeah,
I want to
but
put
like go like
a
in
twist
depth because
to it, like, yeah, I think ways to be more effective
mm-hmm,
in that aspect. Uh, it's when you were talking, I was just thinking about when I was in school, we would have to role play certain scenarios and stuff like that, certain situations on how to respond when you have the scenario at hand on both sides.
mm-hmm,
I always thought, like, how are we going to practice for something where this might not even happen, or obviously it's not going to. I don't know what the person is going to say, so how do you even practice? But the whole purpose of the role playing was to identify themes, identify themes and what can possibly happen. So I think I'm trying to bring it back to being practical, where let's say we have a workshop, you can practice these scenarios, and that's how you learn, because that's it's like um police officers, or um any type of emergency department. They practice for bad scenarios or certain scenarios. We as
true,
people, we can practice for these type of scenarios as well,
mm-hmm,
because as much as educated as you can be on it, at the end of the day, when it's time for it, you might freeze, you might say
mm-hmm,
the wrong thing, or you might do the wrong thing. So
mm-hmm.
put it into practice, and I'm getting as very practical with this answer as to how it should be done. But hey, sometimes you have to get practical. You can practice these scenarios, and um again, it comes back to the church leaders reaching out to mental health professionals so that they can have you can collaborate and have these type of discussions, and see how it play out, because it may not be the same situation that you guys will practice, but you may see similarities. So
Yes,
okay,
yeah,
I remember we had a scenario like this where we had I'm gonna use the talking again, had a church member that was talking to herself. How do I go about it? And then boom, at least you have an idea of how to handle it. It may not be 100%, but
mm-hmm.
it's more closer to 70, 80%, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Better than zero. Any
better
number
than
better than
zero.
zero,
Yeah,
zero is
yeah,
better. Yeah, because it's wild.
Yep.
It's I know say what camp, yeah, in church leaders being vulnerable to be able to say no when they don't
Mhm.
really know the answer. Um, you've talked about like the resources, and you've talked about the responsibility or responsibilities of the church members, and when it comes to these issues. I mean, question I'm want to say about advice seeking anymore, right? Do we say in healthcare professionals no or more advice no would always surpass in church leaders we say advice, because again this is a matter of
Mm,
faith, science, and
right.
you said the other time no and sorry I'm preaching it more the same dear doctor but come back just say oh because I had the faith of a mustard seed and then and I was healed. Whose
Right.
advice should we adhere to in these instances? Because said I think everybody got an opinion or some sort of advice. So what's your take on that?
This is a very touchy and sensitive and delicate
It is,
topic.
but we have to talk about it.
I am two perspectives, right? If
Mhm,
the ideal perspective would be that you have a church that has accepted or that has ingrained a culture of talking about these issues, so you as an individual would not feel bad or feel confused as to whether you are going to oppose or seek for a second advice or a second opinion other than your pastor if you went to your pastor first, right?
mhm,
That would be ideal, right? Oh, maybe the pastor would say, this is something you need to pray about. There may be I sense some spiritual attacks that's happening, right? Um, but that shouldn't mean that if you are hearing things or you can't sleep at night, you can go days without sleeping. That doesn't mean that you can't go see a doctor, right? I mentioned earlier, body and soul, they go hand in hand. Um, so it can be hard. I see where it's hard when it hasn't been introduced
mhm,
to the church and it's not part of the church culture. Then that can be very hard because again, like I said, that Asareno is very ingrained in our cultures and ingrained in our society
mhm.
into what we are talking about in church must be true or is typically accepted by like the majority of the congregational Magiatum.
Yeah,
So
mhm.
that is where the challenge goes in. I'm not going to, so that I guess that's my answer. My answer is like it's a
Yeah,
it's a question thrown back to
but
you, or like two scenarios thrown back to you. That yeah.
yeah, I mean, which is fair. But then the follow up to that would be, at what point do we merge the faith aspect and the science aspect? Because what can I say like, yeah, ɛho hia sɛ yɛbɔ mpaeɛ. You said this last week. Ɛho hia sɛ yɛbɔ mpaeɛ. Ɛho hia sɛ yɛbɛfa yɛaduro. But here's a case where, like, again, as you just rightly said in regards to your spiritual leaders, I'm not sure my bank account. But Sebe, at what point do we merge it all? Because as I said, BBC will be our opinion. Will be
Yeah.
our opinion. And if you find that person that's on the extreme where, oh no, everything's based on faith, but not realizing say without doing the work to
Mm-hmm.
gain the merit of your faith, it's going to create more problems for you. And then again,
Yeah.
imagine you have a congregation of 50 people and then you have 5 people suffering, God forbid, you have 5 people suffering from mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's concerning. So like
Yeah.
at what point in
Yeah.
the merging the advice of healthcare professionals and preacher men. I know it's touchy, but I think that'll be like the way to kind of like conclude today's topic because this is the church, and I'm bringing this up because Sebi, most of the time our culture does not allow for us to kind of like tell us that Sebi, what you're doing or what you're saying is incorrect. because we kind
Yeah.
of like giving the authority to the preacher man.
Well, sorry, my ADHD is kicking in, but the time is now. I don't think you wait. The time is now. So this is like a call to action to our church community. The time is now. It goes hand in hand. If you want to see, I would say this: if you want to see the church move on, the church prosper spiritually, in size, financially, the time is now. And I mentioned this last week. A lot of the reasons why our churches, they're losing our young people, like you said before, we are smarter, we see things more, right? I know it may come off as maybe when I say everything say nim chan and penny for, but these are we're evolving, or we should be adjusting to cultural changes. And that's I strongly believe that this is why young people are leaving the church and maybe they're not going to church, or they're going to more churches that are more affirming, that are talking about these practical issues, that are not as judgmental as, hey, why do you have a boyfriend? You shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't do that. It's an abomination. You're going to go to hell. Instead of saying, these are the steps you need to take to be safe while you're dating and stuff like that, and more affirming topic. So again, the time is now. We have I think maybe then we have to get our church leaders to see that correlation on why the church is now growing, because this is a major part of it. Once they see that, this is this is why then they'll start. I guarantee you, they'll start doing these topics, but they don't see the correlation. So I hope that answers your question.
It did, because that's one of the things. Like I personally, like I try to, like, when people I'm around people, I try to like highlight, because again, being a young adult and realizing like the evolution, because I believe during our youthful days, like growing up and whatnot, like you'll be like, you're also pastor, and it will be like a lot of our generation, right, in the church. And now nowadays when I go to church, I look, I'm like, oh wow, I don't see a lot of people like when I was in here, like around at that time. I don't see people like that look like me in church. So I like the answer as to like how we need to find ways to affirm or reaffirm the wants and the needs of these people to be able to come to church and openly, ask questions without feeling said or we a judge. Because Sebe, as you said, Obi are going through something. Obi said Obi bao it's now kasa kasa. Obi bao or no 1 week, no the whole week, no about Sunday pet. He be cry activities on Zoom on back. Now so on finding who just had anymore. Do you really think that person is sound? Something is going on.
Right.
Something is going on. So to your point, you're right.
Yeah. And again, to the viewers listening, and even to you, when was the last time since COVID your church has discussed how that has affected your everyday life? Has there been a time for you?
I don't recall anything like that. Again, for me, I've been traveling back and forth and going through various congregations, and
gotcha. And
I've never heard. No.
And this is something that's just so recent, right? But COVID has changed our social interaction so drastically. So it's these are the discussions that we need to be having, because if someone comes to church and they hear this type of message, they're like, wow, these people know what we're going through. They understand us, they're going to want to stay, because that's free therapy. You know how much therapists charge, but people are paying for it,
Yeah, I think the last time I've bought like $200, something like that, around that place. Yeah, around that range, if I remember.
And a session is 45 minutes.
Yep.
So and people rather, they will pay if they're not getting anything. When people are desperate, they will pay. They'll pay. So it's these are the topics that we need to start finding the link, the
Mhm.
correlation between church problems and the mental health. I think once the leaders see that, they'll wake up.
Yep. Yo, that's a strong statement. Finding the correlation, church problem
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the mental health
Mental
problem.
health, yeah.
Yep. I would hope that our audience side that have tuned in today, and I hope that some of them may be church leaders listening in today would kind of pick up on the conversation we're having. Um, I know for now I'm going through the comment section. I don't see any comments in here yet, but I wanted to turn it back to you to see if you have any key takeaways for today's conversation. And
Yeah.
again, I like how that strong statement, like look at the church problem and link it to mental
Hmm.
health problem. And then if the ultimate goal is trying to like find ways to bring the youth and young adults back home, which is the church, that might be a possible solution for the churches that are kind
Hmm.
of like now downsizing or not having like a lot of engagement from the youth.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think, like I think this is a very, again, I just want to thank you guys for allowing this platform to be able to talk about these things. I think, if anyone that's listening, hopefully that you guys have appropriate or available means for them to like send questions. Maybe someone is not sure what to ask, they can always ask or send you guys a message, and then maybe we can touch on it at a different time. Maybe someone's probably not ready to get that answer live like that. They want to sit on it before they can ask the question.
Many,
Oh,
hold
I
on.
think we have a
I
question.
see
Yeah.
coming from Amma. Shout out to Amma one time. Yo, Amma, what's up? She's a friend of mine.
Mhm.
So she's saying that role
Okay.
modeling is important from a top-down perspective. It would be good to see our church leaders being vulnerable and open about their mental health, which will also encourage the congregation to open up. Does many have any tips on creating a safe space for the leaders to open up this conversation? Great discussion and thank you. So the
Yeah.
question only see it on your end too.
Yeah. I think, for instance, that was a great question, Amma. Thank you. From the perspective, let's say someone like Amma having that thought process, the only way the leaders will know that these are the concerns is if you approach them. Let them know like, hey, we want to have the discussion. Whether it's a small group, you want to start off with a small group, and maybe a very trusted, find someone that you trust in the church that has that position of power in the church, and start having that discussion with them, and hopefully can grow where it can be included to the majority of the, or like the main congregation. I always think that it's important to start with the youth as well, and then go to the adults and then do it together. But it's never a from point A to a point B type thing, like it's forever flowing. So just having that mind, that or establishing that culture of always, like she said, allowing that safe space. It starts
Mhm.
off with find someone in the church that you trust, that you feel will be the voice of those that are concerned, and that he'll make sure, or he or she would make sure that that the concerns are heard by the other leaders. I think that should be a okay place to start.
Great response. Making sure that again, it's the whole community thing is important. Once you have a community and the community is built on trust, people would open up to have these conversations. And it always starts from the top. If the
Hmm.
top cannot be trusted, or if the top wouldn't open up to have these conversations, those that are at the bottom will still
That's hard.
be
Yeah,
exactly. Everything's high. Everything falls on the hierarchy. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that question is like right on point. I mean, I didn't think about it that way, but it's a valid question. So, I mean, back to what you're trying to say to kind of wrap it all up. But if any questions do pop up, I'll
Hmm.
let you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to put this out there. I have, like, something that's been on my mind and my heart for a while, to provide a safe space. I'm gonna ride with the word safe space. Thank you, Alba, for that term. A safe space for our people, our young Ghanaian people. So we've been working on creating a like a therapy agency that are specialized in addressing the needs of our young people that come from migrant backgrounds, or our parents come from migrant backgrounds, dealing with societal issues here and stuff like that. So we're working on that with a colleague of mine that will provide individual and group therapy as well. So, that's in the pipeline. Hopefully sometime next year that, we'll get that ball rolling. So I think that would be a great place to have these type of discussions, especially for like the group sessions that we're working on as well. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there.
Terrific, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm proud of you, bro. Like, you've been working
you,
hard ever since I've met you. What?
Oh,
Back
Charlie.
in shoot, like, you've been working hard. Now look at you.
Yeah.
Driving, man.
Right today.
Right. But as always, I'm available. Whenever your company do come about, feel free, let me know about it. I'll put you on so you can
Definitely.
also educate the community about it. Because again, it's
Yes.
about sharing knowledge and making sure that we make an impact in our community locally and globally, right?
Mhm.
So again, having you today, it means a lot. And again, discussing the needs of the church and the reason why we need to focus on mental health in the church. So thanks
Yes.
for highlighting what we need to do by first starting off with the definition of what mental health is and kind of like concluding on the importance of having a safe space, a community where we belong, and making sure that our leaders in our various congregations are vulnerable and people that we can trust to open up to have these conversations. So for our viewers, thanks for tuning in today. We really appreciate you all. Feel free to always leave your questions in the comment section, or you can feel free to send us an email at charitvgh@gmail.com with any questions that you may have, and we will connect you to the right resource people to be able to answer all your questions that you may have. Again, thanks for tuning in this afternoon, evening, wherever you may be, or even morning, wherever you may be, and wishing you a productive week. And we'll touch base again, God willing, next week, Sunday. Thank you, and you take care. Bye-bye.